is sinking into the earth.
Weight and capacity. Because, you know, in a game about looting things, being able to carry them is sort of important. And really poorly explained, especially early on. Because Bundleton has just no customer service skills whatsoever. But that's fine, as we're going to go into absolutely everything here today. Well, at least as close as we can. Now, before we get started, I'm going to be measuring everything against the standard rig with no upgrade parts whatsoever. But all the math and how everything works is going to scale up and scale down depending on whatever rig you want. Don't worry, I will go into all the other rigs, but for all the inventory math, this is it. Additionally, I just want to get some weirdness out of the way right off the bat. Weapon weight. It's weird and I don't quite understand it, I'm sorry. See, if I take a VKS and an AA-12, both of which weigh more than 7 kilograms, so they'll put me over my max weight here, but it's not registered until we go into a raid where it's still not registered down here, but it is on my burden capacity here, so I don't know what's going on here, guys. Something's fucky. I'm pretty sure it's just because character weight capacity and rig weight capacity are tracked differently and something's not showing up right, but I don't want to lead y'all down the wrong garden path here. So, I'm not going to say anything for certain. With the great mystery of the weapons out the way, let's get down to the brass tacks. Every rig is made up of multiple components, and each of those components has its own weight and volume capacity. And if you max out either one, it's done. Now, each rig has a different combination of up to 9 slots that house these different rig components. And then the components are then subdivided into different sizes, small, medium, or large. Now, the medium and large are almost the same size. It's different between 300 and 400 cubic units. And yeah, that is our volume measurement.
The cubic unit.
Lord knows what kind. Versus the small sitting at near 120 units. That's pretty bad. That means 3 small containers is not even the size of 1 large. Then each of these sizes is then subdivided into quality, either low quality, which has the base stats, or high quality, which doubles them. Your rig could also have a combination of large item or gun runner rig slots. These work slightly differently. They have a fixed capacity of either 1 large item or 3 broken guns each. In the combat loadout screen, the game will tell you how much weight each individual component can carry down here, but for volume capacity, it only has a percentage up here in the upper left. And while you're actually in a raid, you can press tab and go see them up here in the exact same places. But what the game won't tell you is how much every individual item weighs or how much space it takes up, other than just by seeing how it affects those percentages. At least for loot items. Let's get back to the combat loadout screen, and let's start talking about ammo. Let's start off nice, easy, and comfortable with shot shells. Each individual shell takes up 2 cubic units and 0.02 kilograms. That means with our basic rig, every individual shell is 0.5% of our volume capacity. But 0.15, or just over 1/6% of our weight capacity. That makes volume, not weight, our limiting factor. As you can see here, where we filled up the module, but it's only at 30.3% of its weight capacity. Then if we go over to 545, things start getting a little more messy, as the game has secrets. There are 3 flavors of 545, the regular 545 being the smallest, at 1 cubic unit and 0.01 kilograms per unit, though we'll get back to that in a second. Through to the surplus ammo, which is 50% larger, somehow, and the cryo ammo, which takes up twice as much space and twice as much weight as the base model. But let's get back to that base model. You know how I said it takes 0.1 kilograms per cartridge? Yeah, well, the game lied. Well, sort of. It only decimalizes to 2 places. And that's an issue because these are actually 0.15 kilograms per cartridge, as you can see from the weight down here. Personally, I would prefer better specificity here, but hey-ho.
Mathematical!
Finn, you're terrible at math.
1 cubic unit over 0.15 kilograms is pretty much the standard for ammo in the Forever Winter. That's 545, that's 308, and 45. They're all the same. But then we get into 9mm, and that's where things start going weird. Because 9mm, unlike everything else, is 0.5 cubic units per round. Though still 0.15 kilograms per. That makes 9mm by far the most space-efficient ammunition in the game. Seriously, 40mm are 5 cubic units each. That means you can carry 100 9mm for every single grenade. And if you're comparing the base damage for 110 per 9mm, that means it's 1,100 damage for the same amount of space that a 1,000 damage grenade gets you. Though that falls apart as soon as you start comparing the weights. As 600 rounds of 9mm weigh in at nearly 3 times as much as a 6-pack of 40 Mike. Regardless though, that means 9mm, 40mm, and one of the game's redheaded stepchildren, 20mm, are unique in that they are limited by their weight and not by their volume in terms of your inventory capacity. Though they all go limp and flaccid before the mighty grenades, which are only 0.01 cubits each. That's right, this model right here, this grenade, that's 1/5 of a 9mm, though they weigh a lot more at 0.4 of a kilo, which has some interesting implications in terms of like build optimization. Anyways, let's move on to the consumables. Both the standard and advanced med kits come in at 8 cubic units and 55% of a kilo, making the advanced kit twice, or even more than twice, as efficient for the space. You also have the small med kit, which somehow heals even less and weighs even more. But they're all much better than the food items, which all come in at 14.89 cubic units, very specific, I know, and range between 0.5 kilograms like this MRE here, to 0.55 like these E-Nuggets, to 0.6 like this canteen, but they all heal 80. Unless you want to eat shit, of course, and it heals 20. And you know, that makes food items, alcohol included, take up a lot of space. They're really not worth looting. I mean, it's over 4% of your volume and your weight capacity for literal trash. Endurance stims share the same stats as small medkits. So 2% of the volume and 4.5% of the weight capacity of a standard rig, which I remind you is one large item container. And then we get to the drill, which is only 1 cubic unit, which is kind of interesting considering the in-game model. But that makes it 1/4% of your volume capacity to take a drill with you. Although at 0.67 kilograms, it's 5% of your weight capacity. Hopping over to large items, fun fact, they don't have a weight or a volume. The capacity of a large item container is 1 large item, which all share the weight of a large item.
That's not true, Rose. They have ways, you can see it right there.
Listen, the weights are a lie. I could sit here and tell you, oh, an IED weighs 3 kilograms, while a pneumatic jump weighs 6. Or, ooh, explosives and jerry cans are 6 kilos, but a large lockbox is 20. That's really terrible money per weight. But the truth is they don't matter. They don't actually have a weight. They don't. It's a lie. Even the rigs have weights. But look, I can take the equipment runner rig here at 7 kilos. I can load up the 36M anti-tank rifle at 54.7 kilos, as well as the NTW-20 at 34, and round it off with 60 kilos of large lockboxes, and you know what effect that'll have? Well, it doesn't register here, or here. My burden's at 100%, oh no! Putting it into real units, we're talking about over 420 pounds of gear before we've looted a damn thing. But I can still run just fine. They don't have a weight. Large items have the weight and volume of a large item. All right, I suppose that brings us to the real meat of the issue, the actual loot we want. And here's where we're gonna have to start getting a little mathematical. And I really mean that, because up to now, we've just been solving equations with numbers the game will actually give us. Mostly. But those easy days are done. Now, it's time for CSI Pythagoras. Because we can't just check. So let's you and I go on a little journey and try to find out how big everything we pick up is. And we're gonna take the pack mule rig with us. Because the center top slot is a large item slot, which means it has the exact same capacity as our standard rig. And as we find items, we're gonna slot it up into there, move it around, and see exactly how big it is and how much it weighs. Get it? Got it? Good. Now, my numbers may not be perfect, but I'm gonna do the best I can. Starting us off in Tunnel A with the common loot, we have cyborg components. They take up 7.5% of our volume capacity, so that means they're sitting right around 29 cubic units. And with a sale price of just over 2,400 credits, that means you get 83 credits per cubic unit, and about 2,200 per kilogram, which immediately shows that you should be cutting the lungs out of the cyborgs rather than decapitating them, as the reduced size and weight means we have better price per kilo and per cubic unit. Though the two don't always correlate, as the turret debris here proves. Back at 29 cubic units, it doesn't have great price per cubic unit, but the heightened sale price means it does better in terms of credits per weight. Moving on to the mech repair tools, these are 14 cubic units and 1/6 of a kilo, and get used to that size. It's a very common one. Like you can see, it shares it with the high-tech tools right here, even though they're worth far less. Though way better than these toy dinosaurs, which are 7 credits per cubic unit. Ouch. Cheap plastic remains cheap plastic, though apparently cars are cooler than dinosaurs, since they're worth slightly more. Next up, we have the 1 kilogram PDA at 29 cubic units, which is another very common volume. These sell pretty well. These smuggled organs are nearly half the size and weight of the PDA, for reasons. Sharing the stats is this empty tool case. Let's be real here, looking at this value, anything under like 1K, even honestly 2K, credits per kilo is just trash. You shouldn't pick it up. Next up, we have the level 1 IFF. Now, I know these look weightless, but they're not. You just have to have at least 6 before it'll register. Which leaves some squiggle room in the numbers, but I mean, we're north of 200,000 credits per kilo here. Which isn't a bad haul for Tunnel A, but you have to apologize if I'm not stopping in Ashen Mesa. There's a grabber on my ass because of what I looted here. Namely, this codex. And ooh boy. 14 cubic units and 1/6 of a kilo again, but look at that value. That's over 1,000,000 credits per kilo. You're not gonna beat that. That's the peak in the game. Let's make our way through Tunnel B now. Next up, we have electric motors, which will sort of inconsistently stack themselves for no reason. All the construction materials try to do this. I don't know why. But it would appear they're sitting at around just shy of a cubic unit, or 0.025% of our volume capacity, and 0.1 kilos each. And no, I don't have a sales value. I can't imagine anyone willingly selling these if they know what they are. Unlike the construction foam, when once you have your upgrades, you're done with it. I'm pretty sure it's 0.25 or 1 cubic unit each, but I don't know. I only have one to test it with. But I'm pretty sure it shows the same stats along with this sheetrock. And yeah, they don't sell for much. A trait that is not shared by the rare circuitry, even though it is unusually heavy. The same goes for the exocomponents it normally drops with. They're twice the weight of other 29 cubic unit items, but at their high sale price more than makes up for it. Moving through the Nexus, I got a little greedy, and I have to leave a bit hot and heavy here. Yeah, but it's fine. We made it. And we got some basic tools out of it. It's at 1,700 credits per kilo. as well as a teddy bear, which is probably slightly smaller than I'm estimating here, but I can't tell because I only have one. And you could sell this for 2,300 credits, or you could turn in the quest, get 3,000 credits, and 2 water, and some experience. Though it is kind of grimly funny to think of getting this for Slade and then just selling it to Grillo for no reason. Next on the list of things you probably shouldn't sell, we have an ammo housing component, which if you're not interested in building a railgun, sells for about 4,500 credits per kilo. And the Eurasian tech schematics, which are weightless so have infinite value. I mean, probably not. They're probably like the IFFs and just don't register, but I don't have enough, I can't tell. But even if they share the weight of the IFFs, that's still more than 250,000 credits per kilo here. Oh, and you remember how earlier I said that I thought construction foams might be 0.025% of our volume capacity?
Through the magic of buying 2 of them.
It turns out I was completely right. Yay! Now let's loot Tunnel C. And we got some jumper cables, which are fairly large but also fairly light, giving them a very respectable CR for kg rating of over 2 grand. And while that was about it for Tunnel C, I also picked up some M4 magazines. And noticed that magazine B, the drum, is 0.2 kilos lighter than magazine A. That's funny. Making our way through the stairway gate, we found ourselves some telemetry data, which at 29 cubic units and 1/6 of a kilo is pretty much the standard weight for loot here. A stat it shares with glue guns, which sell for about 30% less. But then we have recorded audio, which is slightly lighter and so therefore more valuable, and dossiers, which are more of the same. And we're really getting through it. I didn't find anything else in Tunnel C other than some European drone components, which share the same size and weight as exo components and rare circuitry, but sell for a lot less. And that brings us to downtown Los Angeles in the end of our run. I'll be honest, I was really hoping a mech would be here so I could get a second codex, just to see if there's any rounding errors there, you never know. But alas, it's not to be. All I got was some Eurasian drone components, which are actually slightly less valuable than the European ones, though, once again, I can't imagine actually selling them when you could just turn them in. You get an M79, which is way better than cash. Not too bad though, we ran out with almost 2 million credits in estimated value. Now, let's talk about rigs. Very specifically through the lens of a cost-value analysis, since only the first 2 are free. And we're gonna start off up top with the enhanced rig. And even though it's the first one we're talking about, it's probably the last one anyone should ever buy. And that's because you're giving up your large item slot for a medium and 3 small slots. Now just to be clear, a small container is a quarter the capacity of a large one. So the enhanced rig overall is only about a 50% improvement on the standard rig. But for nearly 280,000 credits, you could just buy yourself the Equipment Runner rig, one of the most efficient and best rigs in the game, which is a 54% improvement on the enhanced rig, plus 2 large item slots, and it can be used by all of the same characters. There's really no reason to buy the enhanced, while the Equipment Runner should probably be a priority. And next up we have the rack, and because of how we're kind of metering our estimation of value here, it's looking pretty bad, but that's a misrepresentation, as the rack is invaluable for water runs. So for the rack, we should really think about it more like 70,000 per water, which is the highest efficiency in that category in the game. Speaking of efficiency, we have the Pack Mule coming up next. Not only is it the largest container in the game, it's also by far the best value proposition in the game, at only 207 credits per cubic unit of capacity, which is really good. You should buy the rack as soon as you can afford it. Unlike our next rig, the Enhanced Gunrunner. Really, all of the Enhanced series are kind of trash. Compared to the standard Gunrunner, it does have a 50% improvement on the standard capacity. But at 348,000 credits, I really have to question if this is worth buying, when for the same price and available on the same characters, you can have the Medium Equipment Gunrunner, which offers you 50% more storage and 50% more large items for no loss whatsoever, making this probably the best gun running rig for general purpose uses in the game. Unlike our next rig, the Heavy Equipment Gunrunner, which sacrifices standard capacity for 2 Gunrunner racks and 2 large item slots. Now, for most of the time, this is going to be a pretty useless rig that you won't want to touch, but it is the premier option for water raids. So if you like Vepers, you should probably buy one soon. Though otherwise, this is a low priority purchase. Though to my mind, not as low priority as the Heavy Container Gunrunner, our penultimate rig. Being nearly as large as the Pack Mule, you really can't complain about the capacity of this rig, but the lack of a large item slot really holds it back, to the point where I don't know if I've ever used this thing. And finally, we have Queen Bougie herself, the Tiny Rig. Unlike all of the others, it's character limited to a single character, that being Scav Girl. It has the lowest carrying capacity in the entire game and no large item slots whatsoever. But it makes up for that by being incredibly potent, as anyone who's perused my video on the Underground Cemetery is very well aware of. But with a cost over capacity value ratio of north of 100k for the kilos, it's hard to recommend as a high priority purchase, even though it was the second rig I ever bought. I like Scav Girl, what can I say? And that's the end of the rigs. One last tip before we go. To fans of the Loot All button, I'm sure you're familiar with our question mark tiles that obscure whatever you just picked up. If you just drop the loot on the ground, pick it back up again, it'll tell you exactly what it is. Alright, Scavs, I think that about wraps us up. But before you go, while I was in the process of making this video, I learned that we lost a real one. Chris, better known on YouTube as
Grimdark, Half off.
has passed. For those of you who didn't know him, he was a grimdark and more specifically Conan YouTuber, focusing on lore and theory crafting, and well, I've been re-listening to a lot of his videos while making this. To anyone who didn't know the channel but is interested in, like, fantasy and, you know, darkness, or Conan specifically, I'm gonna include a playlist linked in the description below. It'll be the top link. He made great content, and it's a shame we won't see any more. And with that, well, good night, Scavs. I hope you have a good one, and best of luck out there.